Hello, everyone, and I hope you're doing well today. This is Raphael Garcia here for MMA Ratings Podcast episode 147. It is just me today, as my tag team partner, Schwan Humes, is out of commission today. I'm sure he's probably running around with the kids at basketball practice, and he just let me know that he will be unable to make it to tonight's show, but we'll be back next week to talk about the world of MMA, recapping UFC 246 and other news going on in the industry. But tonight, before we get to UFC 246, we got to preview that show, talk about some new fight announcements, and also hit some MMA news bits from this week. As always, first and foremost, thank you for taking the time to listen to us, either tonight or listening to us before UFC 246 hits us. We appreciate you taking the time to do so, listening to the show. Please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at MMA Ratings. And you can also catch us on our website at MMAratings.net, where you can rate the fights and let us know what you thought about all the action from start to finish. And you can check us out on Instagram and Twitter, where we are the most active at MMA Ratings Net. And for myself, you can hit me at rgarcia_sports, where I'm always talking about MMA, professional wrestling, basketball mainly, other sports topics, and political topics as well. And I thank you for every little bit of support that you give me. So this is the first UFC event of 2020 when we get to UFC 246 this Saturday, uh, the 18th. And this is a card I was actually looking forward to talking with Schwan about, because this is a fight card that features a lot of women's mixed martial arts. This is very important to us as we try to make sure we highlight those athletes when they step into the octagon. But of course, it's headlined by the big one, which is Donald Cerrone versus Conor McGregor. And this is an important fight. It's more an important fight than it is a uh, stylistic chess match. And I'll say that because at this point in his career, I'm just going to be clear, Cerrone is a suitable matchup for McGregor, looking to return after 3 years away from the cage. I believe he hasn't fought, 2 years, because he last fought uh, Khabib Nurmagomedov, and we all know how that situation played out. Cerrone is riding two defeats, and he's not the same guy that stepped into the cage and went on his first couple of hot streaks within the UFC. And this is, we understand that that's the case. This is going to be his 50th professional fight, 50th, and there aren't many guys like Donald Cerrone anymore. This guy gets on the horse and he just fights and fights and fights and fights and fights. I still remember that picture of him a couple years back from when he fought one night and walked right into the UFC headquarters requesting another fight as quickly as possible. He's the epitome of being a company man for the UFC, ready to fight anybody whenever they want him to at any given moment. So he's coming off of two losses, though, to Tony Ferguson and Justin Gaethje, both of which were TKO losses. He's gone 3-3 in his last six, and he also had that rough spot where he lost to Jorge Masvidal, Robbie Lawler, and Darren Till over the course of 2017. So you have to wonder exactly what Cerrone looks like heading into this fight, and if that is going to play a part in how well he's going to compete on Saturday. We know who Conor McGregor is. He is a striker first who can get out there and counterpunch with the best of them. He's a slow starter per se. I'm going to say he's a different type of slow starter, because Donald Cerrone is a slow starter too. I would like to say McGregor's more of a measured starter, where he gives his opponent the opportunity to put themselves out there and put themselves in a position to get starched. And I expect that to be the way this fight goes on Saturday. I see him being able to control the space and control the pace of this bout. Schwan and I talked about this last week, because I think the biggest question I had was, how did this fight look early? Is this a situation where Donald comes out aggressive, gets caught soon, and goes down? Does McGregor come out aggressive, knowing that Cerrone is a prototypical slow starter? Does he go to Cerrone's body, which has been one of his weaknesses over the last few years? There's so many different questions about how this fight would look. I mean, how does Cerrone maybe attempt to try to get this fight down to the ground and implement his grappling, where a lot of people forget how good his jiu-jitsu game is. Now it's funny because he was being interviewed this week by ESPN, and he said that he has the advantage in that area, but he doesn't intend on taking this fight to the ground. He intends on standing with Conor, and I think that's going to play to his detriment. But again, like I said, there's a lot of questions to ask about here. In my opinion, I think he does attempt to stand with Conor, and I think he gets hurt early. And I do think he makes it out of the first round, but I think he gets stopped in the second, kind of the way that the Eddie Alvarez fight looked years ago when Conor McGregor won the UFC lightweight title via TKO in the second round. I think that this fight is going to be very similar to that, with Conor hurting Donald early in the first and then finishing him in the second. But that is not the only piece of this fight that is important. There's a lot of different storylines to talk about when you look at the narrative around this fight. Obviously, you have to wonder if McGregor is still what type of McGregor will come out on Saturday. He made the comment while talking to Ariel Helwani that he can beat Donald Cerrone at any point in time, no matter his condition, even if he had the flu. And at this point, I tend to agree with him, because Donald Cerrone isn't that guy. He isn't that fighter anymore. Maybe at an earlier stage in the career, it would be a different situation. But right now, the odds are in McGregor's favor. But you have to wonder if he is the same type of draw, if he's the same type of promotional powerhouse that he once was back when he was defeating Nate Diaz, or he was having the back-to-back fights with Nate Diaz, when he was putting out Jose Aldo, when he was putting out Eddie Alvarez. You have to wonder if he has the ability to regain that promotional stature, because right now the question is up in the air. The UFC has really changed their business model, that they don't need guys to be huge pay-per-view draws anymore, because they have guaranteed money from ESPN. They have guaranteed partnerships which play out better for that organization and further limits the power of fighters such as McGregor. And like, this isn't the same guy who's demanding ownership and talking about he wants stake in the organization. He knows he doesn't have that leverage anymore. So you have to wonder what the buzz will be about this fight come Saturday, because right now it doesn't seem to be as powerful as it once was. It's definitely much more maligned than before. His antics have, I don't want to say caught up with him, but it's definitely caused a pretty loud contingent of people to just shrug and not be as enticed by his antics anymore. You saw Ariel Helwani mention the allegations. He didn't say sexual assault allegations, that there's two different cases out that he's being investigated for. You haven't seen too much conversation about that from ESPN, definitely not from UFC. I'm sure that they will not allow questions to be asked about that come the press conference, which I think is tomorrow. Yeah, because tomorrow is the press conference. I think open workouts on Thursday and then weigh-ins on Friday. Right? Yes. So I don't believe there's going to be any questions asked about that, but we're going to have to see how that plays out. I wasn't too, I don't want to say enthralled or thrilled by the way he answered the questions from Ariel on ESPN, because we've seen these type of responses from combat sports athletes and athletes in general in the past. It's just, it's run of the mill PR type responses that don't necessarily dive into the situation at hand. There's no remorse, there's no admission of guilt, there's no apology, there's nothing of the like. So, that's just more par for the course. Another piece, me and Shawan talked about this last week, is how can I put this into words? If Conor McGregor is not dominant on Saturday, what does that mean for his overall stock? I think that he is being lined up for a shot against Khabib Nurmagomedov. We know that that's already the case, but he's also positioning himself to call out other men such as Kamaru Usman and Jorge Masvidal. I think he wants absolutely nothing to do with either one of those two fights, but we've seen worse fights made within the UFC. I think both of those men dispatched him pretty handily. I think Khabib beats him as well, again, because of the way the fight went the first time. However, I think that he has some space potentially to win this fight, and let's say Khabib Nurmagomedov not denies or stalls on making the lightweight title fight. I would like to see him maybe fight Justin Gaethje. I think that that won't happen because Justin poses a huge threat at a lesser payday when he could maybe go and fight Jorge Masvidal and get more money there. So I don't see that opportunity necessarily playing out for the former World Series of Champion fighter there, but I do think his name needs to be considered in this conversation here. If McGregor does not look dominant coming out of Saturday's main event, I think that he will take another fight before getting put in the title picture. But then again, at the same time, I see it going the other way, where he can be slotted right into the lightweight title or right into the make believe BMF belt. But either way, this is a big fight for the UFC on Saturday. This is their first card of the year. It doesn't seem as big. It doesn't feel as big as past McGregor fights just because I think they've pulled back on promoting him due to some of those allegations that are swarming around his name right now. And I think that's just cause. People were tired of his shit last time around. I'm just going to be clear. I, for one, was definitely tired of the shit. I tweeted a couple weeks ago that I enjoy this sport much more when there's less Conor McGregor to talk about because I think I'm just not here for that. I go to pro wrestling for my pro wrestling. I come to combat sports for my combat sports, and he just doesn't do it for me. However, I understand his value as a fighter, and I understand his value as a name within the sport because the sport doesn't have many eyeballs on it that will, or many names within it that will pull eyeballs from other sports. A coworker of mine who rarely talks about MMA at all, at least to me, asked me during a big team meeting the other day if who has a fight this weekend. So I was when he asked me, I was even thrown back. I'm like, what fight are you talking about? Then he brought up McGregor and Cerrone. I'm like, that's pretty interesting that he was able to do that. Other people knew what was going on as well too. So I mean, his name is going to draw attention there, and that's going to continue the case. But I don't think it's quite the same attention that we've seen in the past, and we don't get pay-per-view numbers anymore, so we don't know how that really will play out either. So let's see what happens from there. But this is a big fight. This is a big moment for the UFC, and in my opinion, this is the biggest moment for Conor McGregor because he has to come out looking like a rejuvenated athlete, looking like a fighter that's ready to put on a clinic in this fight, and also ready to position himself to have a big 2020 like he's been talking about leading into Saturday's main event. So last week I misspoke when I talked about the overall strength of this card, and I forgot about a lot of the women's fights that are on this event, and Shawan did a great job of reminding me. So let's run through some of these other card fights on this UFC 246 card and talk about some things and aspects of these bouts as well. So Holly Holm and Raquel Pennington is a fight in which I think it's two individuals who are on their way out of not necessarily the organization, just on their way out of their position as elites within the division. Let me pull up the rankings real quick because I'm curious of where they both sit. So Holm and Raquel Pennington sit at 3 and 5 respectively at 135 pounds. Amanda Nunes is a champion, where she's a double champion there and over featherweight. She's defeated Jermaine Durandamy. She hasn't fought Aspen Ladd. She's defeated Holly Holm. I think she's defeated Juliana Pena. I don't remember if they fought, but Juliana Pena's record before. You have Raquel Pennington, who Amanda Nunes has defeated. Irene Aldana is up there, so she's just coming off of a big win. And I really think that the only names that could probably stand as challengers to Nunes right now are maybe Ladd and Aldana. Let me see. Did Juliana Pena fight her at some point in time? I don't think she did, although I may be wrong. Let me see. I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again in the future. Juliana Pena has not fought Amanda Nunes, but she's only, I mean, she lost to Valentina Shevchenko in 2017. I think she had a child, and then, yeah, she had a child 2 years ago, and then she fought Nico Montano at UFC in July of last year. So she's not in a position to really demand a title shot either. So this fight for Holm and Pennington, regardless of how either one of these two individuals win, I don't think that they're in a position to demand a title shot because Amanda Nunes finished both of them. She head kicked Holly Holm, got her out of there, and then beat Pennington to the point where she quit on a stool. Her team sent her back out there and she finished her off. And I think it was the fourth round of that fight. But this fight is a rematch of the 2015 contest where I believe Holly Holm won via split decision. It was Holm's first fight in the UFC, and I remember a lot of people were down on her when she won that fight because it wasn't what they thought it was going to be. Yeah, so she won via split, correct. And then we know the story from there. She went on to defeat Marion Renault, and then she head kicked Ronda Rousey. But then she's lost 5 of her last 7, losing 3 straight to Misha Tate, Valentina Shevchenko, Jermaine Durandamy, Chris Cyborg, and then Amanda Nunes. Like that's a hell of a group of women to lose to in a 3-year span. She beat Bethe Correia and Megan Anderson in 2017 and 2018, respectively. And those were wins that kind of keep her within the top of the division, but they weren't worth I mean, they aren't big enough to kind of put her in a position to demand a title shot or to consider herself still a top contender. Pennington, on the other hand, she had a strong run. Let me see how things have been going for her. She has not fought since. Let me see. She defeated Irene Aldana back in July of last year. She lost 2 straight to Jermaine Durandamy and Amanda Nunes. But she had a pretty good run as well, where she defeated Jessica Andrade, Bethe Correia, Elizabeth Phillips, and Misha Tate. So she's put on a pretty strong run of her own. But I just don't think she's in a position where she is going to gain a lot from this fight. Holm is 38 years old, so she doesn't look like the same type of fighter she did when she was younger or throughout her boxing career. So maybe she's at a position where Pennington can pick up a valuable win. She's 31, so she still has longer legs in her MMA career. But I don't know. I don't think this fight, a victory for her, has as much value as it once as is once talked about. I can't remember. I think I talked about this last time, Amanda Nunes fought. I can't remember if it was is it Raquel Pennington or Nina Ansaroff who's talked about leaving the sport for an extended period of time to have a family with their partner. Pennington's with Torres and Ansaroff is with Nunes. So we'll kind of see what that looks like if Pennington wins this fight and she wants to stay around. I can't remember if that was her or not, but that's neither here nor there. That should really kind of detract with how she's going to do in this fight. Pennington is a closer underdog this time around than she was the first time they fought. I think she was about Sean Ross Sapp was talking about it during his preview show over there on Fightful.com, where Pennington, it was a 400 plus 450 underdogs in, and now she's like about 120, 150. I like those odds on her. I think that there's a lot of footage out on how to defeat Holm, kind of similar to the way that there's a lot of footage out there to defeat Frankie Edgar. I think that that's going to play into Pennington's favor, and I think she can edge out a decision here, especially looking back to see how close the first battle was back in 2015. Alexei Oleinik and Maurice Green, I don't really care about that fight too much. Claudia Gadelha and Alexa Grasso, I think this is an important fight too as well. I am leaning towards Grasso in this fight here because I think that Claudia Gadelha is a little bit on the downturn. Yes, she looked better when she fought Ronda Marcos and she was working with the East Coast Super Friends, which was Ricardo Almeida and Mark Henry and those guys in the Northeast. But I don't think she is going to continue. This isn't the same Gadelha that pushed Joanna Jędrzejczyk to that split decision the first time around. I just don't think it is. Her gas tank looked a little better against Marcos, but if it was also because she wasn't as active. there was a big portion towards the end of that fight where she still had gas because she wasn't doing too much. She was standing, waiting for Ansar or Marcos to come forward, and she was basically pushing her up against the cage. I think that Grasso is going to be someone who pushes the pace a little bit more. If you look back to her fight against Carla Esparza, she was willing to push that pace much more aggressively against Esparza, which I think will help her against someone like Claudia Gadelha. Now, the question is, how can she deal with Gadelha on the ground? We saw what Tatiana Suarez was able to do to her, but Suarez is a wrestler that's on another level when compared to the rest of this division. So that is a big question heading into this fight here as well too. I am liking Alexa Grasso to get this win here. And again, as I said, I think it's more because of Gadelha potentially being on the downturn than it is on Grasso being that prospect that can challenge for the title. I think this is a right place, right time fight for her, and I expect her to see her get her hand raised on Saturday. I also wanted to talk about Anthony Pettis and Diego Ferreira. We're going to talk about Anthony Pettis in an interesting and weird story later on in the show today, but his fight against Diego, I think that this is a tough fight for him. Anthony Pettis has taken a lot of damage. He's been hurt multiple times since he's had a lot of injuries with his hands. Diego has not lost since Dustin Poirier beat him back in 2015, 5 years. And now he hasn't fought the greatest of opponent since then. Rustam Khabilov, in my opinion, is probably his most important victory out of that time. But he lost to Beneil Dariush and Dustin Poirier back in 2014 and 2015, respectively. And since then has been on a run. And I am looking at him to win this fight. He's won 7 of his 9 UFC bouts. And I think that that's important. He's currently ranked in this division. Let's see if he's ranked at lightweight. He is not ranked at lightweight. Is this a featherweight fight? I don't think this is a featherweight fight, is it? No, what weight class is this? Okay, so he's not ranked, period. I'm not sure what. Let me see something real quick. Because now I'm curious what weight class this fight is at. Let's see here. This is a lightweight battle. So neither man is ranked at 155 right now. Anthony Pettis is number 11. So this is a big fight for Diego as well, too. I mean, he could definitely get into the rankings with the win here, and I expect him to get the victory. I expect him to stop Anthony Pettis, to be honest, because Pettis is coming off of, let me see what his last, he lost to Nate Diaz, a fight that he was doing well in until he hurt his foot. He got stopped by Tony Ferguson, stopped by Dustin Poirier, stopped by Max Holloway. I mean, he's exchanged wins for losses. He's defeated Charles Oliveira. He submitted him, which surprises me. Defeated Jim Miller, defeated Michael Chiesa, and he knocked out Stephen Thompson with that ridiculous off the cage punch. So Pettis can always pull something out like that, but I think that Diego's going to be prepared, and he's going to suffer too much of a beating. I think Diego's going to get the win via stoppage there. Let's see who else I wanted to talk about on this card. There's a bunch of fights I really want to talk about. Macy Barber and Roxanne Modafferi. I'm probably going to write about this fight tomorrow if I have time. But Macy Barber is putting herself in a position to talk herself into title contention. She's currently sitting at number 9 in the division right now. Roxanne Modafferi is sitting at number 7. When you look at this division, Caitlin Chukagian is fighting Valentina Shevchenko. Jessica Eye is coming off of that first round stoppage. Joanne Calderwood, I can't remember her last fight. Jennifer Maia, I think she's coming off of a loss. Viviane Araújo, she's coming off of a loss. No, Jessica Eye is coming off of a win. She just beat Viviane. You got Lauren Murphy, Roxanne Modafferi, Andrea Lee, and Macy Barber. I do not think that this fight will put Macy Barber in the number 1 contender spot, but it will give her more cachet to continue doing her act of calling out fighters. She's been calling out Paige VanZant. Paige VanZant made it clear she's not taking that fight because she thinks Macy Barber is being disrespectful. that's a conversation for another day. Like I said, that's probably gonna be the topic that I'm writing about. I think it's a little cringe. Her post on Instagram or wherever she can talk about her interviews, talking about Paige. I mean, she knows what she's doing here. Paige is ranked number 14 in the division, and she's calling out somebody ranked that low because she wants to take or build some value in her name off of Paige instead of calling out a Jessica I, calling out a Carter Wood, calling out a Jennifer Maya. Macy Barber's tough. She's a tough out for anyone, and she's trying to play that game. She's young. She knows what she's doing. It's a little cringeworthy to me because I'm just not a fan of it. She's 21 years old. She's won 3 fights in the UFC. Hannah Cifers, JJ Aldrich, who's also on this card, and Jillian Robertson. She beat Jamie Colleen on the Dana White Contender Series the second season. So I mean, she's doing what she needs to be doing. She is 8 fights into her professional career, and she's going to continue doing what she's doing there, calling out names that she thinks will get her closer to a title shot, closer to bigger paydays. But she has an interesting opponent in Roxanne Modafferi. Roxanne Modafferi is 37 years old, and she will not go away. She is the individual who people think she's the prototypical doesn't look like a fighter but will beat your ass type of individual. And don't let her record fool you. Yes, she's 23-16, but she's been doing this for almost 17 years. It'll be 17 years this year, and she's fought some of the biggest names in this sport, from Shayna Baszler, Tara LaRosa. She fought Megumi. Oh, she didn't fight Megumi Fujii. Did she? No, she fought Marlos Conan twice. Defeated her one time actually. Fought Sarah Kaufman, Rosie Sexton, Barb Honchak, Raquel Pennington. If you know anything about women's MMA, you know those are names worth knowing because they're pillars in women's MMA before the Ronda Rousey era, before the Miesha Tate. Well, Miesha Tate was probably around in too as well. I just think Miesha Tate has a fight against Barb, but Modafferi's been doing it since then. She's not going to go out there and just go get put out to pasture. She's not. No way, shape, or form. She lost 2 tough fights against Shajara Eubanks and Jennifer Maya, 2 individuals who were looked at as contenders for their respective divisions. She also won. It was a split decision. Shouldn't have been a split against Antonia Shevchenko, and that was a fight that was booked to prop Shevchenko up. It was meant to make her look good, being Valentina's sister, but Roxanne went in there and kind of spoiled that too. So she's someone that shouldn't be overlooked on this card as well. And I think that this is going to be a tough fight. I mean, the lines are pretty close. I may throw a couple dollars on Roxanne just to see what kind of happens, but she's one that should never, ever be counted out of any fight. Let's see, who else are we talking about here? Andre Fili and Sadiq Youssef. I'm picking Youssef in this fight here. I just think again he's just someone that has more of an upside. 26 years old. He knows how to finish. He can win a decision. He can knock people the fuck out. I think he's riding he just knocked out Gabriel Benitez in the first round. He's won 3 of his UFC contests since joining the promotion, and not including his Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series bout. I just don't think that Andre Fili has enough to really threaten him in this bout. He is a dynamic striker. He is exciting to watch, but I just think that he is going to get overcome in this fight here. And I think that this is an opportunity where Sadiq Youssef can come out looking very good with a victory over Andre Fili. But I do think I am picking Sadiq in that fight there. We also have, I wanted to talk about Sabina Mazo and JJ Aldrich. I want to skip that fight because that was a fight that I wanted Sean to talk about. He's more familiar with those 2 women. But this is a decent card. I am working it for Fight Metric, looking forward to some of the action. Of course, everyone's going to be focusing on the main event, but this isn't a card to be completely scoffed at. Yeah, there's a paywall and all the information for this being a pay-per-view event. Would it have fared better on Fox? Probably, but the organization isn't going to put Conor McGregor on free TV at this point in time.